You're listening to Trade Entrepreneur, the show for business owners by business owners. My name's David Sudworth and welcome to our latest show. It's great to have you back. Thank you very much for joining us again this week. I'm very pleased to have someone on the show this week who I consider not only a good friend, but also probably one of the nicest guys that I know in the chimney sweeping world, Alastair Kemp. Alastair was a police officer in the Metropolitan Police Force in London for the best part of 30 years. And after leaving the service, he started up as a chimney sweep. He now covers Wiltshire, which is in the southwest of England. And I met Alastair on a good number of occasions. I seem to remember, Alastair, the first time we actually met was at a Guild of Master Chimney Sweeps trade show a few years ago. I think you just started sweeping at that point. Is that right?
Yeah, it was. It must have been March 2016, and I was. I did my training in March, so I think I was either fresh off the. I think it was sort of the weekend after my course, basically. So I was really fresh into it, and I think you were just sort of signing up for your course when we met, and I
seem to remember I was doing my assessment, and you'd actually just done your assessment, so you're a little bit further on than me. So it was we had a good chat about what it was like to join the industry almost at the same time. So
yeah, there was we were sort of chatting quite a bit. I remember at the time about equipment, and I think you were looking to buy a set of ladders, and you were sort of playing about with my ones in the car park. And
I did buy the ladders in the end.
Did you?
I did.
If I recall right, that was a bit of a question for yourself at the time, as whether to do roof work or just stay in the lounge sweeping. So we were sort of talking about that question that was troubling you at that time there. But we both sort of moved on and sort of grown quite a bit in our sweeping world since then. I think
that's the thing when you start in a new job or a new industry, you kind of find people who are contemporaries or certainly very close to on the same path as you, because I've said it before, it's a fairly lonely business working by yourself, and particularly when you've got so much to take in, you really you kind of feel out on a limb for the best part, don't you?
Yeah, and I think I say nowadays. I don't know about previous, to be fair, but I found things like the social media forums helpful. Things like the podcast that you've started doing, I hope will be helpful for people. It's good to sort of tune in with people that are on a similar sort of stage in the journey that you are, because you've probably got the same questions, and you'll sort of have a general expertise that you're on a par with, but there will be some things that your colleague may have done that you haven't done yet, and vice versa. And it's good to bounce these things off someone of similar experience.
Just going back to obviously when you're starting out, you spent 30 years in the Met. There seems to be quite a few people who've been in similar kind of roles at either police, fire service, armed forces, going into chimney sweeping. Is there any particular reason for that? I mean, I don't come from that background, so I wouldn't know the answer. But
so I went in. It was sort of at the time when I went in, I didn't know there weren't any other people that I knew in the police force that were doing chimney sweeping. But having decided that was my path, I did sort of bump into, there's a superintendent of mine that ended up being a chimney sweep over in Norfolk, Suffolk way. And there was somebody else I was talking to just as leaving, and he was sort of saying, I've just had the same thought. That's what I'm doing. And I'm not sure it was a stage in life thing, because I left in my very late 40s, turning 50. So maybe it's that sort of stage in life. But I think also in the emergency services, if you like, you're very much used to dealing with people. You're used to going into people's homes, and it's quite nice to be invited into people's homes. In my chimney sweeping job, I was tending to go in without an invitation.
Yeah, I was about to say, I don't think many people invite a police officer into their home for anything other than bad news, really.
yeah, but it's. I must admit, initially, I was, even though that wasn't my comparison when I looked at doing the job, but doing the job, there were quite a few parallels that I'm in there, I'm dealing with people, that I'm used to being in that setting. I'm used to stepping over the threshold into their home. All of that sort of stuff didn't feel strange to me. Used to dealing with rules and regulations, of which there's quite a bit surrounding wood burning and solid fuel and so forth. So used to that sort of wording of stuff. There's a lot of similarities in that way, but also being a totally different career path. And generally, people that join things like the police, ambulance, fire service, they're doing that because they feel they can help people. And to a certain extent, you're doing that with chimney sweeping as well. You're helping people, and it's surprised me quite a bit how many panicky phone calls I get as such of people that have got themselves into bother with their stoves or fires, or they've got an issue that they need resolving, and are really asking quite desperately sometimes for your help to resolve stuff. I wasn't expecting that as much. I was expecting it to be a bit more routine, a bit more repetitive, and in a nice way, it isn't.
And what, in terms of, obviously, because you're going from a profession which is well known and largely respected into a tradesperson role, and some people can look down on tradespeople, that they see them as a lesser status. Not everyone, but that it can feel that certainly it did cross my mind that actually I was going from a white collar profession into blue collar, and I've been when you're brought up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, you kind of always said, everyone said, get a white collar job, go to university, that type of thing. Was there any of that kind of crossed your mind at the time?
Not really. I had a lot of that when I joined the police, to be honest.
Right.
Just because the natural path that my schoolmates were following was on to university. Both my parents had gone to university. My dad was a university lecturer. My mum was a school teacher, and so it was sort of expected that I would follow the academic route. And halfway through my A levels, I sort of figured this isn't for me. And I remember the time going out and doing my work experience. I was looking at engineering and stuff like that, and then I've sort of found actually it's the last thing I want to be is in an office behind a desk, and that's what my work experience was at Shell oil refinery doing fire safety or something like that. It's a long time ago now, and I just thought this is the last thing I want to be doing with my life, and from then I looked at. Well, I actually went to go into the fire service back then, but I wasn't old enough. I was 17. So the police service was the next port of call, really. And I joined the police cadets. So that was my decision going then. And I remember a lot of views of maybe my peers at the time were, I'm sort of dropping out. I'm not not failing at anything necessarily, but I'm choosing an unusual path, and to a certain extent, maybe that's my character. I quite like doing things that are a little bit unusual, but that makes sense for me.
Yeah.
So joining the police was a bit like that. So then moving from the police to chimney sweeping, yes, it did raise a few eyebrows. Some people laugh at me and sort of say, "Do people still have chimney sweeps? Do you still get chimney sweeps go around? You know, there's nothing to sweep nowadays," and all of that sort of stuff. But that didn't worry me particularly, and I think having sort of jumped in with both feet on the Guildmaster chimney sweep course, that then opened my eyes as to the variety of work that was out there, and I haven't looked back since then, really. And in fact, it's the sort of profession people are interested to talk to you about, just because it's unusual.
Did you have any grand plan when you started out? Because I mean, I know myself, I didn't have a grand plan. I just decided that I wanted to just essentially create a job for myself, and make some money, be master of my own destiny, be my own boss, etc. But you kind of, even though you think you're the master of your own destiny, you're not really, are you? Because the business kind of takes on a life of its own.
Yeah, that wasn't what I anticipated, but it is the reality of it. Grand plan, no. It was. I left with a police pension, which was good. So I was sort of thinking, I've got a fallback if this doesn't work out. I did have mortgage and stuff like that I need to pay off and everything. So I thought I need to make some money. But my essential rationale was I wanted to work for myself, and I wanted to work locally. And that was it. And I remember when I considered chimney sweeping, one of the things because I had a few career paths I was looking at, and one of the things that sort of clinched it for me was I'll be busy in the winter when it's all cold and muddy and horrible, and I'll be quiet in the summer. I can go off and do my own thing in the summertime. In fact, it's been fairly busy all the year through, certainly busier in the winter. And I thought I could manage my own diary a lot better than I do. I thought I could just take a day off if I wanted a day off and everything. Whereas in reality, that's a lot harder to organise when your diary's busy and filling up sort of weeks or months in advance. I mean, you're already committed to things, and it's quite hard to change a full day sweeping onto another day.
Did you think at the beginning that you obviously, a lot of people when they get into a profession that they think about the actual mechanics of doing the actual job, but did you have any inkling as to that you would need a business head just as much as a technical sweeping head?
Not really, and I would say that's probably my biggest shortcoming with it, is that I haven't got a business background, having worked in the police for 30 years, and apart from sort of the type of sort of jobs that working in a shop and so forth, I did when I was much younger in my teens. So business-wise, I haven't really got that expertise there. I've just got maybe a bit of common sense, hopefully. But in terms of working with figures, knowing numbers, profit and loss, accountancy stuff, all of that, I'm a fish out of water. And that side of things was the biggest step for me, and probably the step that I didn't really consider or prepare for the best, really.
Yeah, because it seems to be an ongoing theme among tradespeople in general that there's a great book called The E-Myth, by I don't know if you've heard of it, by Michael E. Gerber, a Canadian author, and he states that basically people who start businesses, they are not entrepreneurs. That's what the E-myth is, the entrepreneurial myth, that people who start businesses are basically either good at something or want to be good at something, i.e. chimney sweeping, painting, decorating, bricklaying, whatever it happens to be. The business part of it is merely incidental, but then they get to a point where he terms it as entrepreneurial seizure, because the business grows so far, and at that point you kind of start to have more headaches because you kind of don't know which way to go. The business has outgrown what you initially thought it would do, and I think that's pretty much where you're at now, isn't it? You're kind of thinking, which way shall I go?
Yeah, it's quite strange you mentioned that book because it's sitting on my bedside table.
Oh, right. Not pre-planned at all, actually. But
no, it was given to me by a customer of mine. She happens to be an accountant, and when I'm sweeping, we have a quite a nice little sort of business type chat when we go round. About her business and my business and everything, which is all quite nice. And she sort of said, "You need to read this book." But it's been sat on my. I'm not a good reader. It's been sat on my bedside table since November probably, and I've read the foreword or something like that on it. I intended to get stuck into it over Christmas, but
I actually find it. I find the book is actually quite hard going in places, because I'm not actually I've got tons of books, and I kind of read the first 20 pages, and then what I tend to find with a lot of books, they just kind of repeat the same advice but in different scenarios, and it's kind of like, well, I've already got that. I've already got that point now, so there's no need to kind of give me 20 different ways in which it can be applied, because I kind of already get it. I'm
sort of at that stage with it at the minute. I've just read the introduction. It seems to be repeating the same thing a bit, and I'm just sort of think, just get on with it. But I don't tend to. I'm not a big book reader.
Do you recognise yourself in that E-myth scenario?
Haven't really got into it enough to do that. I think he quotes 4 myths, and I think 1 or 2 of those I recognise. The other 2 I didn't.
He says basically that there's 3 types of people in a business. There's the technician, the person who does the work, the manager who oversees the technician, and then there's the entrepreneur. An entrepreneur's role is to do the horizon scanning, as it were, look at the bigger picture, think of how the business is going to progress. The manager's job is to keep everything ticking over and make sure that the technician's doing their bit, and also kind of liaise with the entrepreneur. And the technician's role, apart from doing the job, is basically fending off the manager and the entrepreneur, because they're not interested in anything else other than doing the work. And singularly, they're no good, but collectively they are all needed. But the problem is when you've got a one-person business, you've got to be all 3 if you want the business to expand. And even if you don't, then you will still have that entrepreneurial seizure, where you'll get to the point that it's giving you headaches purely because the business has kind of taken on a life of its own.
Yeah, I mean, the term entrepreneur, I don't think I envisage, or I certainly didn't envisage myself as that. I sort of really envisioned myself as a self-employed chimney sweep, and that was what I was going into, and that's what I am. But having spent the last 5 or 6 years doing that, you do get drawn into the business side of it. And to be fair, I do find that intriguing. I find the marketing side intriguing, and expanding business stuff. Yes, that's intriguing. Is it what I know about? No, not really. and yes, I could make mistakes doing it. Does it matter if I do? I don't know. But that's why I'm where I'm at the minute. I am a one-man band. I've got my son that does help me on the installation side a bit, and I've now got my daughter that helps me on the admin side a bit. So I suppose I'm sort of naturally expanding without knowing it, without really. But it's I wouldn't describe myself as an entrepreneur, and that isn't how I view myself.
It's interesting that you use the word intriguing rather than interesting. It's almost like it's there, but you really don't really want anything to do with it. But you know it's there, and I mean,
and I was almost going to say it's a necessary evil to look at the business side of things, but I wouldn't describe it as an evil. I quite like it in a way, but it's something I don't feel knowledgeable about, and I know there's lots of people out there that are knowledgeable. Lots of phone calls wanting to give me advice and so forth from cold calls and everything like that, or put your first page on Google and all of that sort of carry on you tend to get when you first step into business. So there's a lot of that going on in the background, and there's a bit of me that sort of says ignore it, just plow on and do what you do. But then there's my logical head that comes in, sort of thinking you need to make decisions about some things, and whether it's around tax issues or how you're going to cope with the workload, having generated the workload. It seems quite natural to want to generate and market and advertise and everything, and that's how I started off. And now I'm at the point of, actually, I don't want to spend money on advertising because I can't service the work that it might produce. So it's then what do you do with that point in your decision process?
It's an interesting one, because I certainly the one thing I do know about marketing is that it's not a turn the tap on and it happens, and turn the tap off and it stops. It usually has there's a lagging effect on those types of things, and you pretty much anyone in the chimney sweep industry knows that you wouldn't necessarily have to advertise in winter because people are there looking, but notwithstanding that, we advertise all year round. Google, etc. And the way we look at it is that if you look at likes of Asda and Tesco, they still advertise at Christmas, and they don't need to, but they still do it, and they'll do it in different media. They'll do it in newspapers still. They'll do it online. They'll do it on television, because they kind of they understand it. But I take your point that if you're kind of wanting to turn the tap off, then you would probably have to do it a lot sooner than you would imagine. And also, I wouldn't necessarily bank on the fact that it's going to turn off. It might turn to a drip, but it will carry on, because the work that you generated up to this point will generate work in itself, through referrals, friends of friends.
Yeah, well, what I've sort of found a lot with that is certainly with how my area's sort of a mix of small towns and villages, and everyone seems to have these little Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups and everything like that, all stuff that I'm not party to, and they'll just pop out there like, anyone recommend a chimney sweep, or state what their problem is, and then unbeknown to me, people will pop my name up. Hopefully I've done a good job, and hopefully I come across well and everything, and my name gets put out there, and I get lots of inquiries saying, oh, you've been recommended on my local group or recommended by so and so, and whatever, and you almost feel a bit under duty to take that work because it's one of your loyal customers that's put their friend or their village person onto me, and really from my point of view that suits me because that's getting a customer that's local to another customer, so I can then hopefully minimise travel times between. But it's sort of marketing that I've got no input in apart from how I dealt with the first customer I came across, really. And it's that perpetuates. And then, of course, if you service that customer, that's two people then recommending you on the various groups that they've got. So it does sort of self-expand from that. And which is quite nice in a way, but I am acutely aware if you do a bad job, bad news travels just as fast. So I am quite aware with that. If you have a piece of work that goes wrong in any respect, that you can get shot down very, very quickly with that. So and again on forums that you would have no sight of and no input into. So you have to be aware of that. And from a personal pride point of view, whether I wanted to work or not, I wouldn't want that sort of talk going on about me or my business. So
it sounds like you're at a bit of a crossroads, really, because you've now got a couple of options. You either expand to take on the work, which means effectively taking someone on, or like we said a few minutes ago, starting to turn the tap off. But that will have its own consequences, not least the disappointment of potential customers. And if there's one thing I know about you is that you don't like to disappoint people. So that will be that'll be a hardship in itself. What's the main barrier to you making a decision which way to go?
I don't know if there's a barrier. There's concerns. There's concerns that if you expand, it could go wrong. You could employ somebody that isn't working to your standards. You've got to put a lot of time and effort into that person to get them up to the right standard that you would be happy with, and then you've got to let them go and do the work unsupervised, essentially. So the only feedback you're really going to have on their standard of work is if you get a complaint in, or if you go and sweep the same customer the next year and there's an issue with it. And there's sort of concerns about looking after that person as well. That you have got enough work and you're taking on a commitment with it. And what if that person gets ill? What if they have a crisis in their life? I'm sort of used to things in the police force in my last job where if you got ill, you went sick, and if you got injured at work, then generally you got looked after on a sickness plan thing and everything. And am I in a position to do that? Am I in a position to pay someone for 6 months, a year, or longer? And with on two sides of it, one, no income coming in from that person, and also the work that would be allotted to them would have to be either turned down or serviced by myself, which is the opposite of what I want. So fears of things going wrong, really, with that. Expenditure and stuff in it, I'm okay with. Time training somebody, I'm okay with. Putting them on a training course, that's fine. I know there's concerns about people then leaving and doing their own thing. I'm not necessarily concerned about that, apart from if I didn't get any notice of that happening. So yeah, there's all of those sort of concerns with going down that path.
I think anyone who's ever done that will have had those very same concerns. I think you can probably, you can console yourself with the fact that it's that they are regular concerns of people who are in that position. I mean, I was, I had the same thoughts and all that business, and I always I find that sometimes one of the worst things you can do is ask people what they think, because I've often said if you ask 10 chimney sweeps what they'll think, they'll give you 12 different opinions, because it's like, I think what I always say to people who ask me that question, and I know we've chatted about this before, I think one of the most important things is that you've got to ask yourself, and this is no slight on anyone, are you up to being a good boss? Some people just aren't cut out to manage people, and that's perfectly fine. I think one of the reasons that people tend to leave small businesses is because the person who grew the business either hasn't understood that their role has changed, i.e. they are now a manager, or B, they've understood it but just completely ignored it. And I don't think either is good. I've often said to people that I understand that my role is changing. I am no longer just a one-person band. I'm a manager, and that with it brings its own set of responsibilities. But I think I took the view that I was prepared to understand that I need to get some more training to be a better manager, because I think that's one of the places where a lot of businesses fall down. They're just basically run by people who have got no understanding that they need to develop their managerial skills. And I think if you get that, then you're probably on the right path.
Yeah, and it's sort of, do I want to go down that path? I'm sort of 54 now. Do I really want to be taking all of that on and learning new stuff with it? No, I suppose you take that back to that word intriguing that I used. Yes, it would be intriguing too, but do I really want to do all of that, or am I just quite happy with how I am? So so there's lots of quandaries with that.
Do you think do you think you'll end up talking yourself out of it rather than into it?
Well, I've probably had the same conversation with myself the last 2 or 3 years, and each year it's got stronger. So it's, if I don't do anything about it, I'll probably be having the same conversation with myself next year. But I think I need to actively constrain what I do if I don't expand. So that's I need to have some sort of acceptance as to which way I'm going with the business, really. And it is interesting talking to others, as you say, and you talk to others and they have a bad experience that someone's come and they've put a lot of effort into them, and then they've gone and maybe gone with some of their customers with them and so forth. And there's some bitterness there, or they've taken somebody on and they haven't worked to the standards that they wanted to and let them down. So you keep hearing stories like that, but then also you see others that are flourishing with 1, 2, or 3 people within their business. So I think maybe the first step's the hardest.
I think it actually it all comes down to recruitment. I mean, you've got to know what type of person that you want, and make sure that you stick to those principles, because I've often said that you can easily recruit anyone who's got a pulse. That's not, recruiting someone isn't difficult. Recruiting the right person is hard. And I don't personally care if someone comes to us and they can't sweep a chimney. It doesn't bother me, because that can be taught. What can't be taught is the values that they have as a person, because if they have the right values, then they can be taught how to sweep, inspect, and test chimneys. What you can't teach people is how they are as a person and how they treat others and their values. So I know as a company we've gone heavily into finding the right person at the recruitment stage, and I think this is a deep-seated thing within a lot of trades. You've got to show people that they can have a career, even if they've retired from one profession and want to come into another. I think still, if people feel that they have a pathway in front of them, then that will be better than someone who just treats it as a job. Because someone who treats it as a job, I tend to find might not have the same outlook as myself, because I think pretty much every business owner I speak to who's having troubles with staff, they say, they're just not bothered about the business. They're not bothered about it, and it's like, well, you're not. They're not really paid to bother about it as much as you. They are basically, they're employees, but nevertheless, you can have employees who are dedicated to the business, who want to make it succeed and have the same value set as yourself. And I think it's about finding that person or persons.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. If I took somebody on, I think I would be, I would find it more difficult taking somebody on that professed to know what they were doing. And because then you've got to sort of manage what they do, and they may or may not do stuff in the same way as you. And even if you try to teach them to do things differently, they're always going to have it was quicker to do it the old way. And when they're off by themselves, they'll probably do it the old way. So it's, I would rather take somebody from scratch. But that means putting some of your own time and effort into it, which means that you can't do that when you're busy. You've got to do it when you're quieter. So yes, I would agree with that. I would also agree that you need to pay them well, which may or may not be controversial. I don't know. And I suppose when you're asking about stumbling blocks, that would be a stumbling block for me, just knowing what I can pay them. I need to sit down. I need to look at my numbers. I need to know how much it costs me to run the business, how much it costs me to get to a customer's house. And as much as I might want to pay someone well, I've obviously still got to make a profitable business out of it. So it's
you got to know your numbers. You've just got to know your numbers, and I'm completely in agreement with you when it comes to paying people well. I mean it's certainly come to the fore in the last 12 months or so. We had the thing last year with the lorry driver shortage and the issue of how much they're paid. And, with the cost of living rising, it's one of those things which is like a pan that's boiling over, and you can't keep a lid on it forever. It's just something which is going to have to give. And, if we put all our prices on our website, and because I want people to know that that they'll pay for a good service, but we also pay our staff well, because I know I don't like the idea of people not having a fair day's pay for a fair day's work. It really annoys me that the idea that someone could not be paid well for the job they're doing, particularly something like chimney sweeping, which has a large set of responsibilities attached to it. The general public might not necessarily know that, but it happens to be true, doesn't it?
Yeah, and if you're only getting, I suppose I won't talk figures, but if you're only getting a small amount or a small percentage of the fee taken at the end of the service, then people are naturally going to sort of question that I can do this myself, and you are going to lose people that you put time and effort and money into training. Are going to sort of say, right, I've got all that training now. There's nothing to stop me going off and doing that. And if it was me, that's what I would do. So I can't really expect anyone else to be any different. Having said that, if you're paying them a reasonable wage and their working conditions are good, and they know they've got a van provided, they know that's fueled, they know all the kit and it costs a fair bit of money. There's that is going to make them sort of think twice about it if they've just got to turn up at 9 o'clock or whatever it is in the morning and then work through to whatever time they're working through to, and whether they're doing part-time or full-time or some sort of ownership over the hours that they've got and the holiday that they've got, without doing phone calls or admin in the evening or doing accountancy stuff and all of that, then that could well suit some people. And it could well suit some people at that retiring from another job, retiring from the emergency services stage in life or whatever, that they just want something that's going to keep them busy, going to keep them interested. They like dealing with people. They like talking with people. But they don't want the hassle of running a business. A
bit like you.
So, yeah, I suppose I was probably naive. I didn't realise that it could be a hassle. And I guess that's what a lot of employees do, that jump ship. They don't realise what's involved in the actual running a business, and
hence the e-myth. It's such a difficult path to go down, but I'm sure there's plenty of people listening to this who've had similar thoughts, and what you said and what we've discussed in the past 3/4 of an hour certainly crossed their minds on more than one occasion. So thanks very much, Alastair, for joining us. It's great to have you on.
No problem at all.
And thank you very much for everyone listening. Just a quick request: if you're listening to this, whatever platform you listen to this on, whether it be YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc., could you just give us a like and a subscribe? Please don't hesitate to get in touch. It's always great to hear feedback from listeners. And again, many thanks to Alastair for joining us, and we will see you next week. Many thanks.